Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Kate, Brian, and Drew, and Lou. Good to have you guys. We'll be talking today about the Woodcarver. This is a story from Thomas Merton's interpretation of Chuang Tzu's writings. If you're new to the podcast, we talk about how Taoist texts, all 200 to 400 probably BC, sometime in there, all point to spirituality that for a lot of us really resonates with our 12-step recovery. We're all in recovery 12-step of some type from some addiction. So you'll hear other spiritual texts quoted. Actually, you have a lot more liberties than we would have in a traditional AA meeting, for example. I wouldn't go in and quote Bible verse in an AA meeting. If I did, it would be just in conversational, and that's not very often. But we'll do things like that here. We'll pull from all kinds of texts, because what I have found is all of these texts are fingers pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. They're just the fingers pointing at the moon, and they're all pointing at something. And I think in spirituality, what we do is we walk and we start waking up to these things. We start seeing how these paths are similar. You know, that old saying that as you go up the mountain, you may start on different sides and the path may look totally different than someone on the other side of the mountain. But as you get closer to the top, those paths become more and more similar, which makes sense. And we're starting to see some of that, right? So that's what we talk about. We do, before we start the story, we've been doing two things. One, a resource that we have for you. And secondly, a synchronistic moment that we have, because the Tao speaks to stepping out of the way and allowing life rather than pushing and forcing. The resource I want to discuss is the daily AA meeting, the Fourth Dimensioners. This meeting's at 9 p.m. Eastern every night. You can find this meeting by going to the AA meeting directory and search for Fourth Dimensioners, or you can go directly to the link at dailyaameetings.com, goes directly to the Zoom link. There's no password, but you do have to be logged into your free Zoom account for authentication. So that's a good resource for you. We started this meeting back at the first of the pandemic, and it's continued on its own, which is fantastic. Someone asked, why do we have the meeting at 9 p.m.? And my answer was, well, that's because my wife said that was the best time for her, for me to have a nightly meeting. So it's funny how things work out that way. Next, we have a synchronistic moment. Drew, you have one for us today, sir?
Yeah, this was just one of those things that is just a little too coincidental to be a coincidence. On Wednesday night, a few nights ago, I had a just really long dream that I remembered almost all of the next morning, which is rare for me. I usually remember bits and pieces, and my dreams are usually pretty short, so it was odd that this one was really lengthy and I remembered it. And the entire dream was based on the world losing electricity and how I was navigating it. It was pretty scary. It was really tense, and it was more of a nightmare than a dream. And I talked to my wife about it the next morning. We don't usually talk about dreams much, but this one, I talked with her about it. Yesterday, on Friday, so 2 days after the dream, I talked to my mom. We were just catching up, and she said that on Thursday, the day after I had my dream, on Thursday, her the town that she and my dad live in, the entire town lost power for hours, almost the full day, and nobody had any idea why. The weather's perfect. There's nothing weather related going on. And she and my dad couldn't remember the last time that the whole town had lost power for that long. So just a coincidence that Wednesday night I have that dream that everyone lost power, and then just a few hours after I woke up, my parents' whole town lost power for the first time in forever. So don't know what it means. Probably I'm not going to try to ascribe too much meaning to it, but it's definitely something I noticed.
Yeah, I'm immediately asking. Thank you, Drew. I'm immediately asked the question, why is that? I want to understand why.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it's just that we get more in tune with what's going on. Maybe it's nothing more than that. I don't know. But I always think that if there is a greater meaning, I will know what it is. It may take a while, but I'll eventually know if there's something to be known.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes it's just the awareness of things. Not much different from I'm thinking about calling someone and then they call. I'm like, why did that happen? At first, I wanted to describe this big meaning. It was, what was meant by this? What? And you do all of that. I try not to do that anymore. I just accept it for what it is. Oh, okay. Maybe it's just we're getting closer in our consciousness, more intuitive, more in sync, maybe. Who knows? I just like it when it happens. And be grateful. It's what I can do. Kate, you gonna read for us, dear?
I am.
Cool.
All right. This is the Woodcarver. King, the master carver, made a bell stand of precious wood. When it was finished, all who saw it were astounded. They said it must be the work of spirits. The Prince of Lu said to the master carver, "What is your secret?" King replied, "I am only a workman. I have no secret. There is only this. When I began to think about the work you commanded, I guarded my spirit, did not expend it on trifles that were not to the point. I fasted in order to set my heart at rest. After 3 days fasting, I had forgotten gain and success. After 5 days, I had forgotten praise or criticism. After 7 days, I had forgotten my body with all its limbs. By this time, all thought of your highness and of the court had faded away. All that might distract me from the work had vanished. I was collected in the single thought of the bell stand. Then I went to the forest to see the trees in their own natural state. When the right tree appeared before my eyes, the bell stand also appeared in it clearly, beyond doubt. All I had to do was to put forth my hand and begin. If I had not met this particular tree, there would not have been no bell stand at all. Or there would have been no bell stand at all. What happened? My own collected thought encountered the hidden potential of the wood. From this live encounter came the work which you ascribe to the spirits.
Thank you, Kate. Good story.
As an overall piece, it makes me think about surrender.
And he took several actions to surrender to. It wasn't just a 30-second prayer.
Right.
30-second prayer and wonder why it's not working.
Buddy, I'm hearing the pause as well.
Commitment.
I heard a lady the other day on a speaker tape that I was listening to, and she made the comment that there was a point where she realized that surrender was not just a one and done deal. I'm surrendering, and I could check that off my list. And I thought that was pretty good. I'm hearing some synchronistic stuff too, talking about the part where, if it had not been that particular tree, there would have been no bell stand at all.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a little bit of what we talked about in regards to Drew's synchronicity. You don't have, I'm a simple workman. He didn't have secrets to tell. He didn't have some mystery. As far as he was concerned, it was just matter of fact. This is what you do.
Thank you, Lou.
There were no spirits involved in that.
Yeah. That first paragraph, I want to talk about that a second, Lou. King, the master carver, made a bell stand of precious wood. When he's finished, all who saw it were astounded. They said it must be the work of spirits. And the prince said to the master carver, "What is your secret?" Of course, he had no secret. Isn't that what we want to do, though? When something seems extraordinary to us, we want to attribute it to something unattainable or way off. Must be the work of spirits, as if it's something beyond possibility, maybe. Drew?
Yeah, that was the first thought I had after the chapter finished was on that point of people thinking that something miraculous happened, when actually it's just somebody being very prepared and focused and knowledgeable, putting their work into practice. And the example I thought of is when somebody comes out of a really long, intense surgery or survives something at the hospital that he shouldn't have survived, and people attribute it to being a miracle. Really, it's the work of the doctors and nurses and everybody who they were very prepared and focused and not distracted, being in the moment, working on what they needed to work on without thinking about themselves, without thinking about this or that. That's what it's attributable to, is the people who prepared and worked hard. And that's these days, sometimes it is a miracle when somebody is prepared and focused. That's a miracle sometimes.
Thank you, Drew.
Look at, I was just thinking about extraordinary, and it means, I think, to go beyond what is usual, go beyond the regular or the customary. And to them, he did, but to himself, he didn't go beyond that. He didn't go beyond the unusual. And it was who he was, what he did. There wasn't anything extraordinary about it for him, the woodcarver.
Thank you, Lou. Kate?
It's like it was a natural process for him to put himself at rest and get himself really connected. He disconnected from all of the stuff of the world and the ideas of impressing the king and everything, and connecting himself with the wood so that he and the wood could create together almost. And that was what Lou was just saying, that was his natural skill with the wood. So that's what he does. But he had to get all of that other stuff out of the way first before he could do it.
This is a quote from No Beginning, No End. It's a book by Jakusho Kwang, a Zen teacher. There's a spirit that we shouldn't lose, and whether we're just making things up as we go along or someone is right there showing us the way, that spirit holds something important for us in our everyday life. There's something there. And it's funny, all these Zen teachers, we do a book study, and I think everyone without exception may say, there really is no God, but there's something. There's something, and it's always something there. And I believe there's something here. It really is, I think, the work of the spirits, in that there's something more than just his skill. He says that in the story. He says there's something more than that. The right tree appears. It comes together for him in a way that's more than just him being able to carve a bell stand. There's something going on behind the scenes. And I think the same, Drew, with if you're talking about medicine, surgery, those things, there's something going on there. I don't understand why my body heals itself. I think that there's a synchronicity that goes on there at times that's more than just ability. And we see that in everyday life too. Just like I mentioned at first, when Drew, you were talking about your synchronicity, how we know when we're contacting someone or something happens and this flow that starts to that's happening and we start noticing it. That's part of that something, if that makes sense. And I think what the woodcarver did here, it does say he's a master. So he's been at this a long time and has skill. He not only had skill, he prepared himself mentally beforehand, and you could say spiritually beforehand, to be able to accomplish this carving. It's interesting. Even though he was a master carver, all of his preparation was not practicing carving. All of his prep was being able to be single-minded and flow in what he was to carve, really. And he replies to the prince, I am only a workman. I have no secret. There's only this. I imagine after he said all of this, the prince said, I wish there was a secret because I don't want to do all this. I'm not, this is commitment here. You know? First, he began to think about the work. Then he guarded his spirit, did not think about other things. And he started the process for him of being single-minded about the carving. And it talks about his progress. He says he fasted in order to put his heart not to have the skill, but to be at rest. He fasted in order to set his heart at rest, not to be able to understand or all the other things that you could say, but to be at rest. And he talks about the progression of that. After 3 days of fasting, he'd forgotten gain and success. He'd forgotten about, what if I mess up on this carving? All those things, all the fear. Maybe we could look at that as fear. And then after 5 days, he forgot praise and criticism, even a greater surrender of fear. And after 7 days, he had forgotten his body. So that's a progression from gaining success to praise or criticism to forgotten self altogether. By this time, all thought of your highness in the court had faded away. That would seem to be the opposite of what he should say, right? All I thought about was pleasing you. No, the opposite. The idea of pleasing him faded away. And all that might distract me from the work had vanished. I was collected in the single thought of the bell stand. Do you think he would have continued to fast if he needed to? I think he would have. And if he would have got to that point before, he probably would have stopped. That's where he needed to be, was to be at rest. That's the place of rest. That all other thought faded away, all the people pleasing, all of the what ifs. What if I'm successful or what if I fail?
Even ego in there with the praise.
Yes, exactly, Kate. Thank you. Yes. He only had one single thought of the bell stand. So what did he do? He went to the forest to see the trees in their own natural state. And it doesn't say, even though he was in the forest looking for the tree, being the single thought was the bell stand, he was not caught up in the fear of not finding the right tree or having to find the right tree or all the self-effort in the process. Instead, what he says is the right tree appeared before my eyes. That, for me, is a very good example of Wu Wei, of effortless effort. He went to the forest. It would have been a lot easier for him to go probably to the lumber yard and look for a tree, not have to go all the way out to the forest. But he went to the forest, which was work. But when he got there, instead of stressing about finding the tree, he just looked until it appeared. Brian?
Buddy, I'm seeing that he took that next, coming back to recovery, he was taking that next right indicated step, and he just let the tree come to him.
Exactly. It says the bell stand also appeared in the tree clearly, beyond doubt. See, the bell stand was created at that point. He said, all I had to do was put forth my hand and begin. The hard work was already done before he started. If I had not met this particular tree, there would have been no bell stand at all. That just reminds me of when we close a meeting here in the South, we use the Lord's Prayer to close a meeting most of the time. And at the end, no matter if we use the Lord's Prayer or the Serenity Prayer, it works if you work it. I used to hear them say that. What the F is the work? What are they talking about? I'm doing all these things. I'm still having problems staying sober. What is the effing work? And I would just sit there and just grumble to myself.
You were covering as hard as you can.
As hard as I could. I was trying to let go as hard as I could, as my friend Don M says. The real work is done beforehand, in that we have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So when I work the steps, I do that before I encounter whatever it is that I'm doing. And that's the real work. And it makes life easier, the way this master carver's talking about the tree. The problem wasn't in finding the tree. The real work was in his preparation before he started. Sometimes I feel I don't have time to do the spiritual practices that I know connect me with what is. I think I've got so much to do today, I can't do this. I need to do this and this. If the carver would have had that attitude, what if he said, oh, I'm up against a time constraint. The prince is expecting this carving, and I'm sitting here fasting for 7 days and not even starting yet. That would stress me out.
It would probably defeat the purpose of the
It would.
fasting. Gotta get fasting so that I can get the carving.
But you see the difference. He was fasting he was fasting until his heart was at rest, not the opposite. It seems counterintuitive. And it took more time to go to the forest instead of just going to the lumber mill. I'm sure he could have found all kinds of trees at the lumber mill. Yeah, the real work was done beforehand. So what are we doing? In my life, am I trying to carve the bell stand at first before I do all this preparation? And I'm getting stressed out, and it's not turning out like I want it to. When if in the beginning I would have prepared myself, stayed connected spiritually, when someone in recovery, especially a sponsee, starts getting stressed about something or has issues, I know what how my sponsees connect spiritually, because we talk about that in the beginning. And they all have different ways they connect. Some meditate, some it's meetings, some walk and meditate. Okay. Whatever it is, I said, why don't you double up on the way you connect spiritually and see if some answers don't show themselves? For me, that would mean meditating more. I remember the first time I practiced that, I had a decision to make, I just didn't know what to do about it. So I said, I'm just going to meditate till I have an answer. I'm just not seeing clearly. It's my problem. So I started meditating that morning, and by the afternoon, early afternoon, I'd meditated probably, 4 or 5 hours at most. I'm not talking about, I would sit there, but every 30 minutes I'd get up and do a walking meditation. So it wasn't a same position for all that kind of stuff. But it was meditating that entire time. And I just stayed and then, oh, that's how I need to do that. So I went and did it and it worked. I'm not saying that formula, what is your secret? But the carver's secret was doing the work. That was the carver's secret. And I realized, I said, if I just sit and listen, eventually I'll hear what there is for me to do in this situation. Now, if I had work I had to do, I wouldn't postpone. I would do what I needed to do and then come back to it. It's got to be practical. But that situation, I had the day, so I could do it. Even the master carver, probably practicing this on a regular basis, he still took 7 days. You think this is the first time he had done that? Absolutely not. He wouldn't have been the master if that was his first time. Kate?
I was going to say that in the very last stanza, it says, "My own collected thoughts encountered the hidden potential in the wood. From this live encounter came the work which you ascribe to the spirit." And that makes me think about, in my own life, if I can focus on, getting all of the nonsense of the world out of my mind and look around the world to what's actually here, what's good and beautiful and stuff. There's more here than I could be experiencing more connection to the universe and the world and the beauty than I am being distracted.
Thank you, Kate. It was his encounter with the tree that created the bell stand, not his ability to create it, not his physical ability. It was his encounter with the wood that created the bell stand.
But he had to be in that mental state to have
see
the
it.
encounter. Yeah.
Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, see, he was awakened to the potential in the wood, which he wouldn't have been if he wouldn't have gone through the process that took him to where he dropped all of the ego.
Right.
And notice that after the ego dropped, gain and success, praise and criticism, forgetting all of self, then he could see.
Right. Once he got all of that other stuff.
He didn't start at the beginning and say, oh, I need to see this. I need to see this. I need to see this. That happened automatically once he dropped all of the other after his 7 days of fasting. Now, does that mean that I know the formula now. I fast 7 days, I'll know it. No, that's not what it's saying.
It reminds me of how I need to get out of my own way so much more often than I do. When I can encounter situations or people or whatever just as they are, rather than bringing into that encounter my fears, my wants, my desires, my attachments and cravings and all of that. And when I can leave those behind and just encounter the situation or the person or whatever as is, then the right thing to do is often much more clearer to me than when I have myself on my mind.
Drew, it's kind of like on the TV show where they've got this, audio file that they're trying to hear something in the audio file and they cut out all the other stuff, then they can hear what's there.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be the same kind of thing in that we have to cut that noise out.
Mm-hmm.
And self-reflection on that would be what we've talked about: surrender, pause, all the ways that we surrender self and step out of the way. Isn't that what spirituality is all about? It's bringing our heart to rest. And notice, again, he's not saying in order to be able to create the bell stand. No, he's saying in order to bring my heart to rest. Because once he's at rest, he knows whatever there is will take care of itself.
Buddy, that's Drew. That's quieting that whisper that tells Brian it should be this way.
Mhm.
I've got the answer. And it's back to what Buddy says. I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, well, don't shit all over yourself.
Don't should I? Yeah. When I start shoulding on myself, I'm in bad shape. I'm circling the drain.
You are. Don't do that. It's a trick. But it's true. His whole goal, if you will, with his preparation was not, oh, I need a good night's rest, or I need this, or I need that, so I can better, my abilities will be better. It's, I need to bring my heart to rest, the actual opposite of what you would think. That just goes back to the being able to step out of the way. The whole problem for me is at times I can't step out of the way. I can see it coming. I can see the wreck coming, but I can't step out of the way and stop my self-effort. And that was preparing him so he could. So can we see the hidden potential in our lives? How about our hidden potential in a circumstance that we have to deal with, or in a family member, or someone that we have a conflict with, let's say, that we know has to be a situation that disturbs you? Can you see the hidden potential in that situation? Can you, Drew?
Just going to say the thing that I think about is the difference between acting from the heart rather than acting from the mind. If I'm letting my thoughts control my speech and my action in those sorts of situations, things don't go nearly as well as when I let my heart do the talking and acting for me.
That's the something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to figure that out. I just have to be open. And notice it wasn't that he had to figure out what tree, he had to figure all these things out. He just had to come to a place of rest. Then he could notice. It would appear before him. That's good. That's all I have, guys. Y'all have anything to add to the story?
I thought it was a good story today.
I think so too.
hopeful story.
Much easier. Yeah, there was one 2 weeks ago. I almost didn't post a podcast because there's just nothing there. And then after talking to Kate, I thought about it, and I said, and Brian, I talked to Brian, and I said, I'm gonna post it. So I'm glad I did. But this one, I'm gonna have no problem posting whatsoever.
I stood up for everybody. I said, get your ego out of it, buddy.
And the thing I think about with this one is they didn't use the phrase in this story, but this is how to get into that wu-wei flow. This is a good way to get into the wu-wei.
All of his actions were to step out of the way, was to come to rest. It took action, but that's where his action was.
Drew, I like to talk about the mind and the heart. That's pretty good.
The action he took was much more effort than I would think of just starting to carve. Fasting for 7 days.
Oh.
Yeah, that's commitment. That's real work.
That reminds me of that inspirational poster that I've seen here and there throughout my life about success is 99% preparation and 1% perspiration.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if he had friends like the Taoist farmer had, or relatives. Well, the prince said, you're supposed to be building this, carving this bell stand. Why haven't you started yet? You don't have but X number of days to do this. When are you going to begin? Are you sure you have enough time?
He probably did. Probably just sat there fasting.
Well,
Have to create a spreadsheet of everything that needs to be done.
oh, yes, of course, Lou. Yes.
Project management.
And practice on 2 or 3 bell stands beforehand so you can see if you've got it exactly right before you build the actual one. Right?
Yeah, they had to have a dozen meetings before.
Couple
Could you imagine?
committees.
Yeah, the anxiety that he could have with that. I know I would, because talking about a real life situation, if you wanted to think of it as real life, all of that would be part of it. He knew what the important part was, right?
He got to knowing that.
He knew his heart had to be at rest.
Yeah.
So he took what actions were necessary to bring that about. Then it all fell in place.
That's why he's the master.
Yes. Good stuff, guys. Thank you. If there's nothing else, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.